So thank you once again for a very kind introduction. So yes, I'm from HiLASE. So I'm part of the Industrial Laser Applications Group. And so I will try to demonstrate some laser processing applications connected to circular economic goals. So I have some list of fields which I kind of find that will be applicable for the talk today. So typically it's that laser processing, such as cutting, enables precise material removal, which minimizes waste compared to other methods. Energy is also delivered exactly where it is needed. Additionally, like for additive manufacturing, allows for direct fabrication of parts where no scrap is produced, so no waste. Also, material surface can be functionalized to increase performance of the system or to enable use of novel but hard to process materials such as carbon fiber, reinforced plastics, composites, and so on. There are some laser-based surface treatments that can enhance durability, corrosion resistance, performance of materials, extending product life cycle, reducing the frequency of replacement and waste produced. Laser processes can also eliminate a need for some chemical treatments in surface modification, in cleaning, etching, and other reduction of, for example, the hazardous waste from the use of chemistry. So in some applications, the chemistry can be skipped to be used at all. For example, like generation of nanoparticles. Lasers are also used in manufacturing of solar cells, anti-reflection of the protective glass panels, or to enhance performance of electrodes in batteries or for hydrogen production, or to develop new nanocomposite materials. In the latter one, so I have some overview for the participants within the REMIT project. As was mentioned, that we are trying to develop some materials for the circular economy. Typically, there are some analytical infrastructure, but there are also some institutes which are offering the laser processing. So these are enabling to use external users to access several techniques, such as general purpose stations in several institutes, micro to nano processing, photochemical modifications, nanoparticle generation, high pulse energy beamlines, laser shock peening, LIDT measurement, or pulse laser deposition. All this can be found on the REMIT project website in the catalog of techniques, so I will not discuss it in detail. Also, another very quick slide of the list of the lasers which can be accessed through the REMIT projects, but there are still some missing. But I will focus mostly on the lasers which are in HiLASE, which have parameters which are not usually found. So there is a line of the parallel lasers which provide high energy pulses in the picosecond range. It is also possible to generate high power in harmonics and differential frequency generation. And this can be used, for example, for fast surface processing and the laser-induced damage measurement. But it was also used for experiments such as proton-boron fusion or space propulsion. The very specific laser is the BVOY laser, which is a kilowatt class nanosecond laser. It holds several records for the achieved power. Initially, it was made in the UK to deliver 100 watts, but later colleagues upgraded it to 1 kilowatt and added the second and third harmonics, what opened potential for new unique applications. It is used typically for laser shock peening or laser-induced damage threshold, where the uniform beam and large energy is a benefit for more precise measurements. Similar laser is as BVOY is also at ENA, which is 2 times 100 joules, but it has more diagnostics, less repetition rate, but otherwise it has similar parameters. So finally, the laser material interaction. So here I wanted to give some theory, but I decided it's maybe better to leave it out And I would just say that interaction of laser with material triggers a complex sequence of processes, and this sequence is highly dependent on the choice of material and laser irradiation parameters. I like this example of hole drilling versus pulse duration, which shows that there is very high importance of choosing the correct parameters. In this case, it's the pulse duration to achieve the best results. With correct parameters, a broad range of options are possible to do with lasers, and with the large variety of laser sources within Laserlab, guarantees that there will be a proper laser source basically for any task. So here's a slide of methods. So it's not really a conference presentation, but I think that there may be several potential users also like later seeing it from YouTube, that it may be good to mention that for laser processing, we have to consider several processing parameters and also how to send the beam onto the target. It's important to understand the experimental limitations. For example, I had some discussion with the potential user of our lab in the past who wanted precise irradiation with fifth harmonic, followed by fire scanning with infrared, but this requires two different systems, and localization of irradiation was a problem. So it is possible to combine techniques. We are doing it, but not all combinations work very well. In general, the setup for laser processing is that, as shown in the top, that we have laser, we have some way to attenuate or control the power, some beam delivery with mirrors, focusing optics, and some means of scanning the beam on the sample. Typically, the scanning for laser processing is done with a galvo scanner, where there are two mirrors which are actuated, and they can tilt, and this tilt is then converted into the change of the position of the focal spot on the sample through FT lens. It's fast, but maybe not very precise for some very tight focusing. For that, there are some setups with microscope objectives and scanning with stages, or there can be a setup which we are commissioning right now, where all these methods are combined, but then it's a bit more complex to work with it. So to get to some examples, so for the micromachining, in general, we will use these lasers with tight focusing and larger power to cut materials or drill some holes. So we can cut basically anything. For drilling of holes, it's important that we can drill holes which are very small and narrow, and the taper is very minimal. Then we can process materials which are normally hard to process, such as tungsten, titanium, or some composite materials. We can also process glass or other different materials, and there is some example on different metals processed at different wavelengths, so that we get always the optimal interaction conditions. Additionally, so I call this like special applications. Some of them I will discuss later, but in here I will mention the microfluidic devices. So we can fabricate these small channels and vias on typically on glass, so that if you have some analytical techniques or want to work with very small amounts of material, that it can be processed in this way. We can also process, and often it is done that we are processing some thin films. So we can be, in the top example, there is fabrication of tensile sensor. Then we can be removing films to enable contacting, for example, electric contacting for solar panels. And then there's an option to remove coatings for tools for machining, but at the moment it's not really economically viable. But for example, if the prices of cobalt will rise, then probably recycling of these these coatings, which sometimes contain cobalt, will be economically viable. Large part of the applications of laser processing is surface functionalization. There are many applications. So, for example, it's the visual. So instead of putting some paint on the surface, we can make physical colors. We can then change surface to enable or to disable the reflectivity. So yes, so coloration, we have some structures to change tribology and decrease friction. There are structures to make the surface more hydrophobic, or to make it, on the other hand, hydrophilic. There are structures which are anti-icing, which is maybe good for the planes, so that there is no ice on the wings. There are also applications for the biology. So, for example, some cells tend to adhere to the surface in some preferred orientation, or some cells don't like when the surface is structured. So the structured surface is antibacterial. And there is many more, such as processing of the surfaces for catalysis, for increased surface of the battery electrodes, for biosensors, chemical and mechanical alteration, increased adhesion of glue on the surface, or laser-assisted glass metallization. So there's an example of large surface structured by highly periodic structures. So it was used as electrode for battery to increase the capacity. So important thing is that we are doing not only the feasibility studies and development, but we are trying to collaborate with industrial partners to find real-world applications, which, due to economic reasons, need large production speed. And with lasers, this speed is becoming reality, but there is also another way to achieve the speed by structuring the molds and replicating the laser-produced features in this way. So, for example, we can have parts which have reduced friction, increased surface adhesion, antibacterial properties, or they have modified wettability. Formation of so-called laser-induced periodic surface structures is often observed during laser material processing with ultra-short laser pulses. These structures are also the key process in several functionalization applications. These structures are quasi-periodic micro to nanoscale structures that are spontaneously formed after irradiation of surface with polarized laser pulses. It's nice that it's a single-step process, and we can apply it to almost any material. Deformation is understood as a result of interference of surface scattered waves with incoming light. So if I apply several pulses to the same position, we'll get the structures which are typically perpendicular to the polarization vector. If we then continue to scan with the laser pulses along the surface, that these structures will align, or they will follow the previous pattern, and they will be extended along the line, and then overlapping the lines will produce a surface with aligned microscopic structures. I was working, as mentioned at the beginning, mostly on fabrication of laser-induced periodic structures, which are highly regular. So there are actually several types of these structures. So there are so-called high special frequency lips, which have a periods which are smaller than half of the irradiation wavelength. Then there are the large special frequency lips, where the wavelength is similar to the irradiation wavelength, and there are two regimes how we can fabricate them. Special regime is the amorphization regime, for example, on crystalline silicon, where this silicon is turned into amorphous phase in a periodic fashion, or ablative regime, which can generate these structures on basically any material. It works well on metals, but it can work also on semiconductors and dielectrics as well. Processing of materials is so typically it's attempt or it was done by a Gaussian beam, which is the native beam shape of any laser, but it's not energy efficient. So often the beam is shaped to achieve several things. For example, high control of the deposited energy. It's higher throughput of surface processing and patterning, and this is done by shaping the beam into typically a flat top. The square flat top works the best because we can tile the surface, and basically each point on the surface will get the same irradiation dose. The shaping can be done statically, so we have just beam shaper which is fixed, or we can have some dynamic beam shaping. As shown on the right, so there is a diffractive or there is SLM, special light modulator, and it can change the beam shape on the fly. So additionally, how to improve the processing speed or efficiency of the surface is by diffractive optical element splitting. So as I mentioned before, that we have lasers which have high power, so we can split the beam into several ones and focus them in parallel. So by this we can achieve processing speeds of for example 0.2 meters per 0.2 square meters per minute for the lips, or 0.3 square meters per minute for D-lip, which is a new record recent from another group. So yes, so as I mentioned, so the D-lip it's another method where we have the laser beam. It is being split by a diffractive optical element. Then we bring these beams back together close to the focal plane, and we are recording the interference pattern of these beams. So we are not really making one structure in the focal position, but we are able to structure much larger area at the same time. So another very special, I would say, application is selective crystallization or amorphization. So there are some examples, for example, of crystallization of titanium dioxide nanotubes. So this finds several applications, for example, in solar cells, sensors, photocatalytic, or water splitting. So this crystallization was done by UV light, so the UV light from the paralyzer, and it is beneficial in the point that we are able to crystallize it selectively. In some point, we don't really have to put the whole sample into oven for extended period of time. Then there is also option which is interesting, for example, for flexible electronics or solar cells, when amorphous silicon and germanium layers are annealed, and only the, I think it was silicon layer was crystallized without intermixing with the germanium. Or there's also option to do it the other way around, where we have, for example, silicon, which is monocrystalline, and by irradiation at the correct parameters, that we are able to achieve that the surface layer of the silicon will turn into amorphous state. Quite interesting option is to fabricate nanomaterials of different morphologies. This is mostly fabrication of nanoparticles by laser ablation in liquid. So like this, we can generate nanoparticles which are clean or ligand-free. It's done from femtosecond to nanosecond pulses. The setup is quite simple. So we are bringing the laser beam and focusing it onto the material we want to ablate in a liquid environment. There is plasma is generated, then there is cavitation bubble with the ablation products, and then when the cavitation bubble collapses, the particles are ejected into the volume. So often this is done, or in the examples below, it's done with nanosecond lasers at low repetition rate. So it doesn't have to be any very special laser. Sorry. And we made this. There are some experts within Nano NVCZ, CALT, or FORT. Interesting application is fabrication of magnetic nanoparticles. Typically, when nanoparticles are made, they are released into the environment, which is not very environmentally friendly. So these magnetic nanoparticles with iron or nickel can be separated from the liquids and can be reused. So some applications of these particles prepared by laser ablation in liquid are antibacterial nanoparticles. These particles facilitated the production of reactive oxygen species. So this is the antibacterial effect. And this antibacterial effect is also further enhanced by the presence of external magnetic field. Then there are some magnetic nanocatalysts which can be produced by reactive laser ablation liquid. So there's also reaction of the ablative products with the liquids where they are produced. These nanocatalysts are, for example, designed to break down antibiotics present in water bodies, and it is expected that they can be repeatedly utilized during or through the magnetic retrieval. There are some additional nanoparticles which do similar things. So photodegradation, they are silver doped zinc oxide nanoparticles, and so the silver oxide, the zinc oxide has a wide band gap, so it works well in UV, but it doesn't work well with the sunlight. So, for example, by doping, band gap can be decreased, and so efficiency of the photocatalysis can be controlled. Here, the doping is achieved by ablation of zinc oxide with a deposited silver layer of control thickness, and the thickness controls the amount of doping in the particles. Other methods for this exist, but they are more complicated, expensive, or waste generating. Further, so not only the nanoparticles, but also thin films can be generated by pulsed laser deposition. Pulsed laser deposition is used to produce thin films or low dimensional materials such as molybdenum disulfide, perovskites, or tungsten disulfide. In PLD, high intensity laser evaporates the target material to be deposited. The material in form of plasma plume deposits as a thin film on the substrate. So this can be done in a very high vacuum or in some gas, for example, oxygen, if the oxide films are to be deposited. The setup is relatively simple, the mechanism not so much. The benefit of this is that the plume material keeps the stoichiometry, and that favors the creation of multi-element materials. Thin films created are typically amorphous or nanocrystalline, but by heating the substrate, the crystallinity can be improved. Some example applications of this are production of zinc oxide pollution sensors of the nitrous oxide, or thin film electrodes for hybrid subcapacitors based on cobalt and tungsten oxides. So yes, also, so these pictures are from CALT, which are also part of the remate. Yeah, so next application of the lasers is LIDT, or laser-induced damage threshold. So if you want to develop, nowadays there are a lot of applications of lasers and photonics. So we would like all the optical components to work as long as possible. So to develop high power resisting optical components, we need to find the limit, like how much they can withstand. So this is done in the laser induced damage threshold, where high power lasers are shot into the material and evaluated like how much fluence is needed to cause some modification. The results of this can be used for finding the range of energies, like where the component is safely to be used, or we are using it also before almost any measurement to find out the range of material processing parameters for optimal conditions. So in our labs, we have the setup shown in here. So there are two beam lines from Perla and from Bivoy. Back is the introduction vacuum chamber where the samples are placed. And yeah, so then maybe for industrial partners, it's important that this laboratory has some ISO 9001 certificate. Yeah, and also HiLASE announces an LIDT challenge every year for mirrors. For example, for picosecond at second harmonics, manufacturers can send their optics, and we test it and announce the winner for the highest damage threshold on the market. So this is how it looks like. So we have a sample with some automatic measurement. So there are the graphs of the probability of damage versus the fluence on the sample, or we can have the maximum fluence the mirror can withstand compared or against the number of pulses we will apply on it. Well, so the last method is the laser shock peening or LSP. It is a cold wonking process that will plastically deform the material by laser-induced shock waves, imparting deep compressive residual stresses. So this greatly enhances fatigue life of the components. Then also parts can use less material for the same durability, because like the cracks will not form as easily. So there's some wear resistance, and it has many benefits as less downtime of the machinery and longevity. It can be applied for many metal materials, and it has also applications, for example, for enhanced lifetime of turbine blades, or for enhancing of the durability of welds. So there are some graphs how it may look like. So there's also comparison to shot peening. So shot peening is that when we are not shooting laser but stainless steel balls onto the material, but compared to this technique, the laser processing is better, or the results are better. So there is less consumables, it's more controllable, and the stresses impinged are deeper. So, and yeah, so and the last application, so which is quite recent, is application for 3D printed parts. So the 3D printing seems to be kind of the future of manufacturing. So it uses less material, or like it uses only the material which it needs, but sometimes the material can be porous, which decreases the lifetime of the 3D printed parts. So by laser shock peening the material, the defects in the surface are like pushed back, so the porosity is greatly reduced. There is also the tensile stress is reduced, and also it slightly increases the micro hardness. So this was the list which I was able to find. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have some further, or if you would like to find more, so you can find on the HiLASE page or on the web page of the Remade project. So thank you very much.